Hi everybody, it is Tuesday and we are in the kitchen. It may look a little bit different today. I've set up my table and the camera a little bit differently so that we could get a different view. You'll have to let me know what you think about it. All right, so today we're going to be making a wonderful, comfy, comfort dish, Paleo Chicken Pot Pie. So I got the idea because I had some leftover chicken and I thought, why not use that? And I challenged myself to making some crust. So I've done it before. We'll see how it comes out this time. A little iffy when I'm doing it live in front of everybody. But to get started, in order to move things along, what I ended up doing was prepping all of the ingredients for the filling. So this is very much like a traditional chicken pot pie, except that it doesn't have grains. So it doesn't have flour in it. It doesn't have eggs in it either. That's not paleo, but that's just something that I thought I would mention to you. So what I do have for ingredients is garlic and onions, celery and carrots, which are pretty traditional for a chicken pot pie. And I got some parsnips at the farmer's market this week. And I thought, oh, I love parsnips. They're nice and sweet. We'll add a little bit of that in. And I put some sweet potatoes in instead of white potatoes. So those are the ingredients for our filling. I'm going to turn on my stove here for a minute and get things heated up. So what we're going to do this in two steps. We're going to work on the filling, and then we're going to work on the crust. And then we'll assemble it together and put it in the oven. Okay, so as I mentioned, I have everything prepped here. Now, typically, I would be chopping these for you, but in the interest of time, I thought I would save that for, or do it ahead of time, I should say. And if you're interested in seeing how I chop onions, for instance, or sweet potatoes, for instance, take a look at some of my previous cooking classes. Or I have a prep it and forget it program where I cook along with you. You have the ingredients and we cook along together. So check that out on my website, eveyschweig.com. And it's a lot of fun to do. And you'll get more confident in preparing these foods. And prepping is the way to go because it makes things go quickly, as you'll see in this demonstration. So, okay, let me bring you over to my stove over here. All right. So hopefully you can see, I've got my skillet going. I just put the heat underneath the skillet. I'm going to add a little bit of olive oil. You can use any kind of oil that you wish. Avocado oil is also good. Coconut oil is good. I like to use olive oil. I'm just going to coat my skillet. And the first things I'm going to add in are my onions and my celery. I'm going to wait till that oil heats up just a little bit. You can hear that nice sizzle, so that means oil is nice and hot. And I'll add in my celery as well. And I'm just going to let this cook for a few minutes until the onions start to soften. And then I'll add in my other ingredients. So when I was prepping these vegetables, what I tried to do is keep everything more or less the same size. And you'll notice that the sizes that I chose this time are fairly small. This is probably maybe a 1/2 inch to 1/4 inch square so that things cook quickly. So while this is heating up, I'm going to bring over some of those other prep ingredients. Along with my garlic, I have some fresh chopped rosemary. Probably about 2 teaspoons. I'll be adding some thyme, some dried thyme. And I thought I would throw in a little bit of marjoram. I like marjoram, so I thought I'll just add that in. Another ingredient that would be really good for this is either sage or a very good one is tarragon. I love tarragon with chicken. just going to turn this down. I have this down now on a low heat. All right. I'm going to add in my carrots and my garlic. My parsnips. And my sweet potatoes. Smells so good. As soon as you put that garlic in, those flavors start coming out. And I'm gonna turn that up. It's probably on about medium-low heat right now. I'm going to add in that rosemary. And I'm going to add in about a teaspoon. Let me see what I had added in before. Yeah, about a teaspoon of my thyme. And I just like to estimate these amounts when I'm doing it. Thyme and chicken, you know, all of these flavors remind me of chicken soup. And I'm going to add in maybe about half as much margarine. Maybe, actually, it's more like a half teaspoon of the margarine. And I'm going to get this cooking up. Let me just tip this so you can see what's going on here. So what do you think about this new setup? I thought maybe you'd be able to see a little bit more about what's going on the stove. And then when I go over to the counter, we'll be able to see what's going on with the pastry. All right. Let me just double check my recipe, make sure that I have added everything. I always seem to forget something. It just seems to be part of my MO. So we've got everything cooking. That's great. So what I would like to do at this point is, normally I might let it cook a little bit longer, but in the interest of time and getting things going, it will cook in a broth, so I don't really need to worry about it being cooked totally through. I just want to get things caramelizing at this point. Grab a lid for later. All right. And so what I like to do, I'm not going to add my chicken because my chicken is already cooked. Remember I said I had leftover chicken? I actually have some leftover chicken thighs. The chicken breast is great. If you had a rotisserie chicken, that's great too. Just be sure to debone it beforehand. And again, I cut them in bite-sized pieces, so you can, when you get a mouthful, you don't have to worry about it being too big of a chunk, which is why it's nice to have the smaller pieces here as well. So you're thinking more soup size. So at this point, I'm going to add in my broth. So I have about 2 cups of homemade chicken bone broth that I made overnight. I actually like to do it in my Instant Pot, and I do it on a Instant Pot high pressure for about 2 hours, and then I just let it go overnight on a slow cooker setting, and it comes out fabulous. All my leftovers, so the leftover ends of all of these veggies, I put in the freezer, and I add those in along with all the chicken bones that I have, and it makes a wonderful broth. I actually got some chicken feet from the farmer's market, and I added those in this time too. Chicken feet add a wonderful, all what you like about bone broth is that it gets gelatinous. Chicken feet add a lot of that. So I am adding about 2 tablespoons of arrowroot as a thickener. You could also add tapioca flour. That works as well. And I'm going to make a little slurry by adding some of my chicken broth. So I get all the lumps out before I add it in. There we go. All right. And then I'm just going to add that in, stir it around. That's just a little trick to keep it from getting lumps. If you're ever making gravy, you know that you have to do that first with your flour. All right. So I now have this all cooking nicely. And I have a can of coconut milk that I'm also going to add in just a little bit to make it nice and creamy. But first, let me add in our chicken. So I have maybe about 2 cups of chicken, maybe a little bit more. As I said, all cut up from leftovers. I'm going to stir that in as well. I'm going to add in about a 1/2 cup of my coconut milk. I didn't get the normal brand that I like to get, which is Trader Joe's, because Trader Joe's has no additives to it. This is an organic that I got, but it does have some guar gum in it, which I'm not crazy about having added in because you don't need it, but it's what they had. It's the best that I could do, and I usually just go with that, the best that you can do. All right, so I'm trying to mix this a little bit because, as you know, coconut, as you can see here, there's solids on the top. I'm just trying to mix it in a little bit before I pour it in, holding it over that pan for all the drippings. And I'm going to add in about a 1/2 cup. This is about 1/3 of a can. And I'm going to stir that in. Oh, this is looking lovely. And it's starting to thicken up. And as it bakes, it will also thicken up more. All right. Let me just show you what we've got here. All right, so hopefully it looks as appetizing as it smells. All right. I'm going to put a lid on this, and I'm going to turn it to low. And that's good. And we're going to go back over to the island because we're now going to work on our crust, an important part of a pot pie, right? So I'm going to work with 3 different types of flours that are non-grain. I'm going to work with cassava. Cassava is great. It has inulin in it, which is a prebiotic fiber, which is great for the microbiome. I have almond flour, and I'm going to bring back that arrowroot. The arrowroot helps keep it stretchy and moist. And I'm going to add in a 1/2 cup each of the cassava flour. Make sure that's exactly the amount I have here. Leveling it off. All right. I like to just kind of keep this out, the outside of the measuring cup clean. And I want to make sure that you can see what I'm doing. Hey, Rebecca, how are you? All right, so let me add in now a 1/2 cup of the almond flour. Make sure I have a nice even There we go. All right, we're making chicken pot pie today. Paleo. And I just added in the almond meal and the cassava flour. And I'm going to add in now a 1/4 cup of the tapioca. You can also, arrowroot. You can also use tapioca. They have the same consistency, the same qualities. I found the arrowroot, so that's why I went with the arrowroot. FYI, tapioca is nothing more than the starch that comes off of the cassava. And cassava is yucca. So lots of different names for the same thing. I'm going to mix up. I'm not going to add any salt to this because I have salted butter. Speaking of which, get my butter out. Now I slipped my butter into the freezer for a little bit so it's nice and cold. That's the trick of making a nice pastry, is to mix in cold butter. You could use ghee for this as well, but I had the butter. I didn't have ghee available to me, so I'm using this right now. The other thing I want to add in is a little bit of apple cider vinegar. And I'm going to add in a little bit of cold water as well. So I have some water here that has some ice cubes in it. That's how cold I want to keep it. And I'm going to add in, this is 1/3 cup. I'm going to add in just under 1/3 cup of ice water to this mix. But first, we need to put it into our food processor. So I'm adding in my mixed, as you saw, I used a whisk. I wonder where that word came from. A whisk to mix together all of my flours. And then I'm adding in my butter. I should do it this way so you can see. So what I did was I cut them into butter pats before I put it in the freezer. You could freeze it for 15-20 minutes. But you do want it cold. You never want to have it room temperature because it will make your pastry heavy. I'm going to put my lid on. Okay. And then in every processor, there's a little spout that you can add liquids. I'm going to add let's do it this way. So I have my water here. I'm going to add another tablespoon of my apple cider vinegar into the water. So the water and the apple cider vinegar are mixing together. Apple cider vinegar actually gives it a nice little flavor to the crust. You can add lemon juice as well. That works just as well. And then what I'm going to do is I'm slowly going to add the liquid as I pulse my dough. And the goal is I want my dough to look crumbly. And I forgot one thing that I didn't add, so I'm going to go back and add it now. I'm going to add some ground flax. Let's see, I'm going to add about 2 heaping teaspoons of my flax. Let me just dry off my, tablespoons. I'm gonna dry off my tablespoon measure. Let me add that in. Typically, I would have added that in when I added my dry ingredients together. And I'm just going to do 2 rounded tablespoons. This adds some healthy omega-3s. It adds more fiber. Just a little oomph to your pastry, right? I just realized I forgot it when I looked at the color. Now, you don't have to add this, But it also adds a little thickener too, and it has that stretchiness to it that helps the final pastry. So, let me grab some pastry parchment paper. So I have some parchment paper here. I'm going to turn the dough out onto the parchment after doing crumble, and you'll get to see the consistency that it is. All right. Hey, Shushmita. Good to see you. Hope your weather is okay there. We were very lucky today. We got a little bit of sunshine. It was so lovely. We haven't seen that in a while. And it's so important this time of year. All right, so now I have this pile here, and I'm going to push together. And when you look at this, you can actually see that there's dough clumps still in there, and that's what I want. There's butter clumps. I want the butter to not be blended in. That's what's going to keep it flaky. I'm just going to push it all together here into a ball. Almost looks like a cheese ball with something mixed into it. And I'm going to wrap this up now in this parchment paper. And I'm going to refrigerate it. It should refrigerate for about 30 minutes. All right? Now, luckily, I did some earlier today, and that has been in the refrigerator. So I'm going to take that out and we'll take a look at it, okay? And in the process, did you notice? I put my cutting board in the refrigerator to keep it cold. Remember I said how it's important to have everything staying cold? You don't want that butter to be melting on you. Let me just get this out of the way and wash my hands. Okay. So at this point, I now have this nice cold surface. It's not necessary, you don't have to do it. But I do have my dough from earlier today. And I did roll it out one time. And the way I rolled it, I'm gonna see if I can unroll it for you so you can see, is I actually rolled it up. I rolled it flat. Well, it's falling apart, but that's okay, because I'm gonna be rolling it again anyway. And what I did was I folded the sides in like this so that I had one long, straight roll, just in thirds, and then I folded it in thirds again, so that I ended up with this nice, neat square. And this kind of starts making layers for the butter, which will make it flakier in the long run. Now, I don't have a rolling pin here, so I'm using a water bottle. I'm trying to be creative here, but I thought I'm just going to put it in the refrigerator and make that cold as well. I actually put some water in it because I figured that would give it a little weight and help me with rolling out the dough. I'm gonna tip this down a little bit so you can see it better. How's that? All right, and what's nice about doing it on the two pieces of parchment, oh, you know what I wanted to do though? Before I start rolling, let me put a little bit of arrowroot sprinkled on top and on bottom. So that was on the top. Let me turn it over. Put a little bit on the other side to keep it from sticking to the parchment. And I like to spread it, my hand over it like that to keep it going. All right, so let's get back to that rolling. And let's get this out of the way so I don't knock it. I'm just going to keep turning it, because what I want to do is I want a circle that is going to be about the size of my pie pan that I'm using. Roll it out. And this really is cold right now, so it's staying. See how it kind of pulled apart? Easy enough to fix. We'll just tuck it together, go back at it. I can look at it now and say, okay, I need to push this way a little bit more. So with my roller, I can't quite call it a rolling pin, can I? With my water bottle, I'll spread it out. And I want to try to get it a equal, even consistency all the way around. How are we doing? It's getting there, getting there. Let's roll it out a little bit there. What I like about doing this technique and keeping it cold and then sprinkling it with a little bit of arrowroot is it doesn't stick. Looks like I've got some spaces in the middle. I'm going to push them back together again. And I think I'm almost at the size that I need to be. Let's see. The edges over here are a little bit thick, so I'm going to roll that out a little bit. It's a little bit thick here. I actually might roll towards the middle, just to give some density into the middle, because I think I've got a good size. Whoops. Got a little aggressive there. All right. Pretty good. This dough is very forgiving. If I see a piece stuck, you can just come back. Oh, I see what's going on here. I have a little hole in my cutting board that was falling into. All right, so that's looking pretty darn good size-wise. So let's set that aside. I see a crack there. I'm just gonna patch it up a little bit. Good. All right, I'm gonna check on my sauce. I'm gonna bring it over to us over here so we can see it. So I have a pie dish. I'm going to just give it a little bit of an olive oil coating to grease it. It's probably not totally necessary, but I'm also going to do it along the edges where the pie crust will be, and that will help it keep it from sticking to the dish. There we go. All right. So I now have my greased dish, and I'm going to get a ladle and bring over my film. All right. Whew. A little bit of steam there. All right. So, and as I said, this will thicken up a little bit too as it cooks. I'm not going to do a crust on the bottom. I find with something like this, it just gets very soggy. Now, if you like a thicker sauce, by all means, add more of the arrowroot. If you want it creamier, you could add more of the coconut milk. Smells delicious. Oh, I hope you can see all the colors that are in this. Again, I always talk about color, adding color. I didn't add salt, and since I don't have salt in my crust, I'm going to want to add a little bit to my dish. Oh, here it is. I have a little salt cellar here. So I'm just going to sprinkle in, there was about half, maybe a quarter teaspoon. A little bit there, and I'm going to add some pepper as well. Now, if you like a little heat in your pie, by all means, add some red pepper flakes. A little unconventional, but that's the beauty of making your own dish. You can add seasonings to your taste. All right. Let's just add this in. All right. There you have it. Okay, so now we have our filling. Now comes the tricky part. All right, let's see how we do. So I could, let's see. I think it's sturdy enough that I can just flip it on top. Now, it is hot, so it's going to start sinking quickly. So I'm going to want to move quickly at this point. Oops, got a little sticky here. And I'm going to start crimping my edges. I see I have some thicker edges. So I'm going to fill in where it's thinner. And where I have extra, I can fill in there. But I like to just kind of pinch all the way around, kind of seal it into that dish, right? I think the thinnest spot is right along here. And it did get a little bit wet as I turned it over, so that might be a little bit of a challenge. So I'm just gonna clear off the edge, the rim. I'm gonna add a little bit over here. Right? Okay. All right, let me just rinse my hands off. Another little trick, I can put a little arrowroot on my hands. Don't you like this apron? It's now totally getting white from my dirty hands. But if I add the arrowroot to my hands and go around, I can then form that crust edge. So I preheated my oven to 375, and I'm going to add this in and cook it for about 20 minutes. And all right, so I made it some edges here. And then what I'm gonna do is I'm just going to give it a little crimp all the way around. And get some more arrowroot on my hands. Pardon me. All right, so I'm just finishing up that around the edge. All right. And there we have our dish. All right. So I will post this once it is baked, so you get to see what the finished baked product looks like. In the meantime, if you have any questions, feel free to text me. Go to my website for any prepping tips if you'd like. And hopefully I will see you again next week. Bye-bye for now.